Hi, everybody. I'm here with David Makovsky, who is a Ziegler Distinguished Fellow at the Washington Institute, also director of the Correct Project on Arab-Israel relations. David, good to see you. I know that you have devoted so much of your professional career to, um, you know, U.S.-Israel relations. You worked in the White House, and also, of course, you know, Israel-Palestinian relations. We're talking about what's happening right now with Israel's parliament limiting the Supreme Court's ability to overturn decisions by the government ministers. Can I start? How serious is this from where you sit?
I think it's a pretty big deal because, as an American, we're used to many layers of protection. We have a constitution, we have a Bill of Rights, we have term limits, we have two houses of Congress, and we have the ability, if we want to change a constitution, that 38 states, I believe, have to vote on changing a comma to any amendment. Israel doesn't have any of that. What it's had is been a very kind of fiercely independent judiciary to deal with any overreach of the executive authority, where most of the power really rests. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, there are three branches of government, but being that they're a parliamentary system, unlike our presidential system, they are, in America, Biden could be the president, and there could be the Senate and the House are Democrats. I mean, Republicans. In Israel, and like in many parliaments, I should say, when the government falls in a no confidence vote, the parliament falls too. Almost
Mm-hmm.
all the legislation really comes from the executive. So the judiciary is I would say, the main bulwark against the monopoly of power by the executive. And like I said, it doesn't have these same protections. Israel has something called a basic law, which
Yep.
is like a constitution, but not precise because it's not completed, because they couldn't have done church and state. So, but what they never settled it was how many people would it take to overrule kind of, a regular law. And if they had a super majority, let's say, I don't know, 80, 90 out of 120, we wouldn't be watching the spectacle we're seeing. And I thought this is a ploy, sadly, to weaken the authority of the judiciary. The judiciary, and by the way, the judiciary is not immune from criticism. They're not, have they overreached on occasion? But I think that you use a scalpel, you don't use a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
And I think it's rough that, in America we know to define democracy is not just majoritarian. It's not just we have a slim majority in one place. It's about protections for minorities too.
Well, and the
So
word
I think
reasonable,
this was a
right?
big deal. What?
Well, let me, this has been sort of an ongoing issue, of course, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and this far right coalition. How has the White House handled this, President Biden, from where, in your
I
view?
think he's done a pretty good job. I mean, people always judge things by their result, of course. I think what he was able to do was to kind of thread a needle in these last several months, because he is this rare bird in Israel who, because he's been around for so long, has got, he met Golda Meir in 1973. There's no Israeli politician today that could say, as I said to Golda Meir in 1973.
Right.
So he's got this kind of, the public's in Israel, they love what they call the kishka, is a Yiddish
Mm-hmm.
phrase. Like, they love a guy who from the gut. Like, does he care about us? In the gut, the gut. They want to know. So they think Biden does. And so what the needle he was trying to thread is to say, I love Israel. I've loved Israel all my life, and like, but the Israel I love is one that's so, you know, so connected to democratic tradition. And I think this move weakens you. So if you really love a friend, you have to tell them where they're off course, because you're going to make a change. You need consensus. This is about the rules of the game. It's not about a policy dispute. It's like, if I love baseball, so like, if I was coming to Yankee Stadium, to play baseball, but the other team was coming to play football, it wouldn't work. I mean, you need consensus on the rules of the game. So I think Biden was able to say, I identify with the people of Israel. And he does very well in polls because sometimes presidents don't establish that kind of visceral bond with the public soul. And they're saying, he doesn't really like Israel. This guy is unique in that he has established that. So when he doesn't invite Bibi, people, the prime minister, which has never happened before, the prime minister comes in, usually goes right to Washington. Here, 7 months, he hasn't been there, and the president said publicly he's not going to be invited so soon. So what he's been able to do is he won the people of Israel, but he didn't beat the government of Israel. And the government, to me, was just, if I'd use the phrase, almost hell bent on getting this done, because this prime minister is afraid of his more far right, coalition partners, and he doesn't want to alienate them. I would argue they have nowhere else to go. They are not going to go with the center. There's no left in Israel. Right. It's only center or right. So, their options would have been limited, but he didn't want to alienate them. And the net effect was they pushed forward anyway. So I don't know if there's anything Biden can do, but what he was able to do was to distinguish between the people of Israel and the government of Israel. And that's not a small feat of his.
Well,